Hi everyone, it's Shanezi. Welcome back to my channel Nezzle and to another video. In today's video, I'm excited to announce that I am going to be bringing back Nezzle Talks. Now, several years ago, back in 2020, I used to do Nezzle Talks. However, this time, I'm going to focus on questions to do with Grenada. So before, it was a wide range of psychological questions and so. However, those didn't seem to be very popular with you guys. So I'm bringing it back, but with a twist. So we're going to focus on whatever questions you have about Grenada. I will do my best to answer them. Now, if you do happen to have a psychological question that I feel like I can answer, then I may give it a go. But for the most part, going forward, the Nezzle Talks will be about Grenada. And for the very first video, as we get back into Nezzle Talks, I thought it would be good to do an updated version of the living expenses in Grenada video. So back in 2020, when I did that initial video, I gave an idea of what living expenses were like. At that time, I had simply done a poll on my Instagram stories and persons had answered the questions asked there. This time, I figured I would take it a step further, and so I created a Google form and asked persons to complete it. However, I must say that Grenadians don't seem to like to fill out questionnaires, so I asked and still was only able to get 102 persons to complete it. However, it's still about double what I had last time, so I am incredibly grateful. So to all the persons who assisted me by answering the questions in the survey, a very, very big thank you. So firstly, I looked at where the persons were from. I was hoping to include persons from Carriacou and Petit-Martinique. However, only one person answering the survey was from Carriacou, and there was no one answering from Petit-Martinique. So unfortunately, I'm just saying that off the bat, I know a couple persons were excited to get the viewpoint from those persons, but I wasn't able to get many responses there. The majority of the responses came from persons in the parish of St. George, followed closely by St. Andrew, and then St. David. Additionally, the majority of persons who answered the survey were between age 26 and 45. Of the persons surveyed, 68 of them were responding for their entire families, while 33 were responding only for themselves, and one person indicated that they pay half of whatever numbers they provided. So one of the first things I was interested in was whether or not persons rented or owned the homes that they lived in. So approximately 53.9% indicated that they own their home, while 28.3% indicated that they rent, and the remaining 17.6% stated that they live either with parents or in a family home or with someone else who is the owner of the home. I also was interested in whether they were renting the places furnished or unfurnished, and interestingly, half of the persons who indicated that they rent indicated that their apartment is furnished, while the other half stated that they rented it unfurnished. I was also interested in whether those persons who own their home own it outright or if they still pay a mortgage on the home. And interestingly, the biggest percentage of the respondents, 53.19%, indicated that they own their own home, so they don't pay a mortgage on their home, which is very commendable. The second biggest category, of about 34%, signifying about 16 of the participants, included that they do pay a mortgage, and in fact they pay over $2,000 per month for that mortgage. There was one person who indicated that they pay under $500, but I do think that was an error and that they possibly meant to select rent instead of own, because I find it hard to believe that persons pay less than $500 as a mortgage, but I could be wrong. So if you know of persons who do pay less than that, then leave a comment below and educate us. In terms of rent, 60% of the participants indicated that they spent between $1,001 and $1,500 for rent. So that was kind of the average rent. Some persons did state that they pay less than $500, and there were persons who paid more than $1,500, but the biggest category was in that $1,000 to $1,500 range. I also randomly threw in a question about yard maintenance. Not really sure why, but I wanted to get an idea of how much persons spend on their yards. And not surprisingly, given I'm one of those persons, most persons indicated that they spend less than $100 per month on yard maintenance. However, there were persons who indicated that they spend more than $300. In fact, 8% of the persons who answered that question said that they spend more than $300. So some persons really do care about their yards. So if you are someone who is thinking of moving here and you're really into having a very well manicured lawn, then pay attention to those persons and not people like me. So I added in this question late. So a lot of the initial persons who did the survey did not answer this question. However, when I was encouraged to add these questions, I wholeheartedly agreed that it would add to the content being provided here. So I asked persons, how often do you see the doctor? And interestingly, the majority of persons, 76.5%, said that they only go to the doctor when they need to. That means if they're feeling sick or they wake up and they're in immense pain, they go to the doctor. Only 20.6% said that they go once a year, which is what we should do, for annual checkups. And only one person who answered this question indicated that they go twice yearly. I also wanted to get an idea of how much they spend on medical expenses. However, from just looking over the responses, I don't think that the answers for this question really adequately represents how much persons spend on medical care here in Grenada. However, I'm still going to share it, but bear in mind that I do believe that a lot of people spend more than $1,200 because I recently did some blood work and that quickly racked up. That price went through the roof. So I wouldn't take these as gospel, but the largest percentage, 38.3%, indicated that they spend between $200 and $400 on medical expenses. And the second largest group, 26.6%, which represents 9 persons, because as I said, fewer persons answered these questions. These persons said that they spend less than $200 a year on medical expenses. As we continue to talk about spending trends in Grenada, an area that's commonly overlooked is mental health. There's a misconception that therapy signifies that something is wrong with you. Plus, Grenada's small size can make some hesitant to seek local help due to potential social encounters. Unfortunately, that can be true no matter where you live. There's often a stigma around seeking therapy, even when you can really benefit from it, causing persons to push aside issues they're having. That's why I'm thrilled to introduce BetterHelp, the sponsor of today's video. They connect you with licensed therapists trained to listen and offer helpful, unbiased advice. Personally, BetterHelp has been a game changer for me. Every week, I talk to my therapist about goals, concerns, anything. It's a safe, non-judgmental space, and my therapist even checks in with friendly messages during the week. There are also helpful resources like classes on wellness, boundaries, and so much more. Are you ready to try it? Use my link, BetterHelp, that's betterhelp.com/Nezzle to head over to their website. Answer a few questions and get matched to a therapist experienced in helping persons with similar struggles. You can even choose therapist gender, preferred therapy type, and so much more. The best part? Therapy happens via phone call, video chat, messaging, whatever you prefer. It's easy to start talking to a therapist. They usually match you within 48 hours, so you can get started quickly. BetterHelp connects you to a therapist who can support you, all from the comfort of your home. Visit BetterHelp, that's betterhelp.com/Nezzle, or select Nezzle on sign up to get 10% off your first month. Thanks again to BetterHelp for sponsoring this video. So continuing in the arena of health, I asked persons how often they visit the dentist. And similar to the question on how often they visit the doctor, the majority of persons also indicated that they only visit the dentist when they need to. The second largest group indicated that they visit the dentist once per year, and then the third group indicated that they will visit twice per year. One person indicated that they can't afford it. However, on this note, I do want to say that as far as I'm aware, the medical centers do provide free medical and dental care. So if you are someone who feels like you can't access medical care or dental care due to financial constraints, then do visit your health center and find out what's available for you. You may be surprised. The final question I asked on the topic of health was whether or not persons have health insurance. And please forgive the dogs continuously barking in the background. Of the 34 persons who responded to these health questions, 18 indicated that they do not have health insurance, while the remaining 16 stated that they do. So it was almost an even do and don't in this situation. Moving off of health, I asked questions about groceries. So I wanted to know how much do persons spend on average for groceries. And in this category, I also wanted to compare how much larger families spend on groceries compared to smaller families. Overall, the majority of persons indicated that they spend between $401 and $600 on groceries. And that was closely followed by persons indicating that they spend over $800 in groceries. However, when I compared families with 3 or more persons to families with 1 or 2 persons, it was interesting to note that families with 3 or more persons were indicating that the majority of them spend between $401 to $600 per month on groceries, while the majority of respondents who said that their households were 1 or 2 persons indicated that they spend between $601 to $800 per person. So we're seeing fewer persons spending more money than the bigger families. However, we also need to bear in mind that this is a very small sample size And also we're using self-reporting measures here, and sometimes persons either think they spend more or less than they do, and so it may not accurately represent the actual spending of these families, but this information is just to give you an idea of how much you may or may not spend in these categories. Of course, if you know you're someone who purchases a lot of expensive groceries, then you are going to be spending way more than $800, as opposed to someone who may be purchasing mainly things from the farmers market and growing a lot of their items, etc. So do bear that in mind if you're trying to calculate estimated costs. And with every category stated here, of course, you're going to factor in things that may be personal to you in deciding how much you think you may spend if you decide to move to Grenada. Or even if you're coming to visit for an extended period of time, this should help you to have an idea of how much you should budget per month. So after looking at groceries, I wanted to look at the utilities. So I started with water. Water is usually the cheapest utility on island, and so it came as no shock to me when the biggest percentage of the respondents indicated that they spend less than $100 in water per month, with 33 indicating that they spend less than $50 and 43 indicating that they spend between $51 and $100. And then equally, 13 persons said that they spend between $101 and $150, and 13 persons indicated that they spend more than $150 on water. Next, I was very interested in electricity, and in this category, I wanted to take it a little step further as well. So I didn't just look at how much persons spend on electricity, but I also factored in whether these persons have an AC unit in their home or whether they do not. So straight off the bat, just looking at the figures, the biggest percentage of persons indicated that they spend between $201 and $300 in electricity, and this was closely followed by the second biggest group, who indicated that they spend between $101 and $200. So overall, we're seeing the majority of persons saying that they spend between $100 and $300 in electricity per month. However, it is still worth noting that 13.7% of the persons who answered the survey stated that they pay more than $400 a month in electricity. Now, when asked how many persons have AC units in their home, the majority of persons indicated that they do not. So only 27.5% of persons indicated that they have an AC unit in their home, while the other 72.5% indicated that they do not. And in comparing the bills of persons with AC to those without AC, persons with AC, the biggest category of persons were paying over $400 per month for electricity, whereas the biggest category for persons without AC were paying $100 to $200 a month without AC. However, interestingly, the second biggest category for both AC and no AC was $200 to $300. So it really depends on how you're using the AC. We can't just blame the AC for the high electricity prices, because there were a few persons who indicated that they do not have AC, yet they do pay over $400. Of course, we also have to bear in mind that there are other things besides AC that can bring up your electricity bill, especially things like fridges, deep freezers, especially those that are not energy saving. So after looking at utilities, I moved on to transportation, and I wanted to have an idea of the modes of transportation most persons used, as well as how much they spent on transportation. And the majority of persons indicated that they either use their personal vehicles or they use like public transportation. Not many persons indicated that they use taxis, rent vehicles, or use Hail-Up. The numbers in those categories were very small. However, in each category, at least one person stated that they do use those means of transportation. And for persons who may be wondering what Hail-Up is, it's kind of like Uber, but our Grenadian version of it. But out of the respondents who answered my questionnaire, only one person indicated that they use Hail-Up, and they didn't indicate it as a primary mode of transportation. So my next question is, if you own a vehicle, do you have a loan for that vehicle? 57.1% indicated that they did not have a loan for the vehicle, while the remaining 42.9% indicated that they do have a loan. And when asked how much they pay for this loan every month, the majority of persons indicated that they pay between $501 and $1,000 per month for their vehicle loan. Following this, the second biggest category was between $1,001 and $1,500 a month. So then I asked about fuel. To be specific, I asked about gas, but hopefully the persons answering also answered for diesel if they happen to use diesel. but I was only thinking about gas at the time. But I wanted to get an idea of how much persons spend on gas per month. And the biggest percentage of persons who answered this question indicated that they spend between $201 and $300 per month in vehicle fuel. The second biggest group indicated that they spend between $301 and $400 in gas. So on this point, I will say that you also need to factor in the type of vehicle that you're driving, because some vehicles are more fuel efficient than others, and also the distances that you are likely to be driving daily. And guys, see, I went really in depth with this questionnaire. Maybe that's why people didn't want to fill it out. But I also asked persons how much they spend on vehicle maintenance. So how often do they service their vehicles and how much do they spend on it? And most persons said they either serviced maybe every 3 to 4 months. That was the most common answer. A few persons said maybe once a year or so. Some persons said every 6 months. But the majority of persons said every 3 to 4 months, with the majority of persons indicating that they spend between $400 and $800 per year. And then following that, the two other responses, the two biggest responses afterwards, were tied for either person spending more than $1,200 a year or less than $400 a year. Then I asked questions about communications and entertainment. So I wanted to know like how much persons spend on their cell phones, their internet, their cable TV, that kind of thing. So I first asked whether they are prepaid or postpaid. And interestingly, what is different from this survey to the last survey that comes to mind right off the bat is the fact that this time around, the majority of respondents indicated that they have postpaid plans, whereas back then the majority of persons had prepaid plans. And I believe that's largely due to the fact that there are much better postpaid options being offered now. So now you can bundle your cell phone with your home internet and your TV and get it at a much cheaper rate. So you have a lot of persons who are doing that. So 66.7% of the persons answering indicated that they are postpaid, while the remaining 33.3% said that they are prepaid. And the majority of persons indicated that they spend between $51 and $150 on their mobile phones. I also asked if persons have an internet subscription at home, and in this case, the majority, 93.1%, indicated that they do have an internet subscription at their home. And 34.3% of the respondents indicated that they do have a cable TV subscription. 34 of the 35 persons who indicated that they have cable indicated that it is bundled with their internet service. So they pay one bill and that covers their internet as well as their cable. And persons paid between $110 and $298 based on the responses given by those who indicated that they bundle their internet with their cable. We're winding down, guys. I know it's a lot of questions, but hopefully it's very helpful to you. If you're just curious, maybe you live here and you're curious as to how much persons spend, or you're considering moving or just visiting for a prolonged period and you want a better idea of how much it costs to live in Grenada. So I asked persons how much they spend on clothing, and apparently not many Grenadians shop for clothing very often, so the largest percentage said they spend less than $200 per month on clothing. That was 83.3% of those who answered that question. That was all of the persons, 102 persons. 83.3% indicated less than $200 on clothing. And given that I didn't give an option for not spending anything, I do believe it's possible that at least some of those persons don't really spend on clothing, at least not on a monthly basis. I also asked how much persons spend eating out, and the biggest percentage indicated that they spend between $101 and $200 per month. Now, on the topic of eating out and socializing though, I was informed that I should factor gender into the response here, because males tend to spend a lot more when they go out than females, just because males may fet each other, as they say, and they also tend to buy a lot of drinks and maybe sometimes even food for females. And so oftentimes males spend a lot more than females. However, I didn't factor gender into this questionnaire at all. So unfortunately, I cannot give figures for who spends more, whether it's male or female. I mean, I think we know it's male, but I can't really indicate like how many females filled it out to know if that is why the figures are this low. But going off of the numbers here, only 10.8% indicated that they spend over $300 eating out or dining out. Similarly, on the question of how much is spent liming or socializing, the biggest percentage of persons indicated that they spend less than $100. And as someone who has my fair share of male friends, I do know that I don't think any of them spend less than $100 in a month on socializing. So it leads me to believe that this questionnaire was filled out by a lot more females than males. However, as I said, we're just going with this. So the majority of persons indicated that they spend less than $100, but in this case, I would not use this as too much of a marker. If you're someone who likes to go out a lot and party and socialize and have fun, you're not going to spend $100. You might be spending thousands of dollars. So just bear that in mind. But if you're somebody who rarely goes out and you may just go out maybe once a month or something, then maybe you could spend less than $100. But the next two biggest categories were for persons who spent $101 to $200, and then persons who spent $201 to $300 socializing per month. The last thing I wanted to look at was gas, like cooking gas. How much do persons spend on cooking gas? And in this category, I felt like I needed to separate the 20-pounders to the 100-pounders, because here in Grenada, we have 20-pound cylinders and we have 100-pound cylinders. And so I asked persons firstly, which ones do you use? And 76 persons indicated that they use the 20-pound cylinders, while 26% indicated that they use the 100-pound cylinders. So when I asked about the 20-pound cylinders, I asked them, how many would you use per month? And most persons said they use one. Some persons even privately messaged and said, you know, one cylinder will last me more than a month, so it's not completely representative. But when I calculated it using the price for a 20-pound cylinder here in Grenada, it's $40. If you're in Carriacou or Petit Martinique, it's $49. But at $40, if you're using one cylinder every month for a year, you'd be spending $480. So then I compared that to persons who said they buy the 100-pound cylinders. Now, the 100-pound cylinders are a lot more expensive than the 20-pound cylinders because the 20-pound ones are price controlled. So the price of the 100-pound cylinder changes every month. At the time of recording this video, a 100-pound cylinder in Grenada costs $235.65, while a 100-pound cylinder in Carriacou and Petit Martinique costs $258.65. Again, using the Grenada price, the 100-pound cylinder, if persons are using 2 cylinders a year, then on average they'll be spending about $470 a year, which is similar to my calculations for the 20-pound cylinder. With the 20-pound cylinder, we had persons who did indicate that they use as many as 3 bottles per month. And also with the 100-pound cylinders, there were persons who indicate that they use a cylinder every month. However, those were in the minority in both cases. So guys, I tried to be as in-depth as I could. Hopefully this video is not forever years long. And hopefully you enjoyed it and it was helpful to you. Don't forget that Nezzle Talks are back. So leave your questions in the comment section, whatever you want to know about Grenada, whatever you want to see me do like a deep dive into so you can have all the information in one video. Let me know, but I look forward to answering your questions for you. Thanks again to BetterHelp for sponsoring this video. Don't forget to use my link, betterhelp.com/Nezzle, to get 10% off your first month. If you enjoyed today's video, please thumbs it up so I'll know that you enjoyed it. Leave a comment letting me know your thoughts on the video, the Nezzle Talks you want to see, and of course, subscribe if you're new to the channel, or if you have not yet subscribed, then hit the subscribe button and then hit the bell next to it so that you will always know when I post new videos. So thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you in my next video. Bye! And for persons who may be wondering, those were in the minority in both cases. Oh! Whew, what time is it? It's afternoon. Oh my goodness!